Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today I want to talk about Love, Death and Robots. For those of you who have not yet caught up, Love, Death and Robot is an anthology, an animated anthology series that Netflix released this month, and I am over the moon about this series, right? Now, as usual, as per the channel here, I usually like to have a general discussion and not so much a review for a lot of the content that's here. This is no different, and because it's an anthology series that spans up to 18 episodes, I will not necessarily be going through every episode, but I will touch on a few here and there, and those that I felt stood out the most, which for me was not episode 1, Sunny's Edge, as well as Three Robots, which was the following episode, and also Zima Blue, which was episode 13, if I'm not mistaken, right? No, I do believe the creative team behind this, Tim Miller and David Fincher, right, worked on Deadpool, and not so much to say that that is the overall tone of the film itself. It's a collaborative effort for the most part, of different animators, different writers, putting together their ideas to create these unique short stories. Now, if you are a fan, myself here, I am a huge anime fan. And watching this, what came to mind for me, and I'll describe Love, Death and Robots as, for everyone that I've come across so far, this is how I describe it. Animatrix, heavy metal, and essentially Black Mirror all crammed into one, right? So if you are a fan of the fantasy and science fiction genre, this is definitely something that's going to blow you away. Now, it's not without its criticisms, and I guess that a bit later on, some of the concerns that I've seen people online voice. But overall, for me, this is a spectacular step in the right direction for Netflix, and it gives me hope because I mean, we continue to have animated content. Every day we have movies. Into the Spider-Verse was just out, which, as I mentioned, that one of the creative team behind Into the Spider-Verse actually did one of the episodes on Love, Death and Robots, which was, I believe, The Witness, right? And that was also spectacular. I think for this anthology series, there is something there for everyone. And some persons, again, you might not necessarily appreciate every single episode, but well, for me personally, I loved every one of them, even those that didn't resonate with me all the way, right? So for a number of years, we continue to have animated content, but I think it's fallen into a trope now where every animated film that comes out, or the notion is that animation is only made for children, essentially, right? And nothing against those. I do still enjoy those. Just the past few months, Netflix has released the Dragon Prince, which I enjoy very much, and I'll be doing a video on that at some point later on, from the creators of Avatar and Avatar itself. So we've had a lot of content coming out. They did also a Godzilla animated series as well, and there are quite a number of things a number of animated films that have come out, but it's usually centered around the same target audience, right? And as a kid, I probably watched I watched some dark stuff, right? Probably a bit too much than I should have, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is animation is something that appeals to different people, different personalities of all ages, all groups, right? And it's not something that we've been able to recognize on network television, more so because I mean, there's a rating system that they must follow, and a lot of these large names in Hollywood and production companies, they won't necessarily get behind projects like that. If for someone who's interested in animation, to that extent, not just the fluff, right, but those that address serious socio-political issues and a bit more adult oriented, you move towards watching anime, which I mean, for those who are into anime, it works, but for not everyone likes anime. That's the truth and fact of it, right? I know quite a few persons who don't enjoy watching it because I don't know, for them it feels like it's just moving pages, right? So it's good to see that we now have what I consider to be, and I'm hoping is the future for Netflix later on, a platform for a lot of these all of these unique properties to find a home, right? I mentioned a few of those before, Animatrix and Heavy Metal, which they're quite old. They may not hold up over time, so I'm not sure if anyone would want to check those out. But if you are into that, if you love this content, you should definitely go back and check those out. They're really good. I mean, there are definitely a few others that those who maybe are familiar with Cartoon Network might recognize. Similar to Magical Shopping Arcade, Abenabashi, or Fooly Cooly, right? So there are a lot of references and throwbacks that I feel coming out just from watching these episodes, and each episode, I don't believe any of the episodes actually share the same animation style. So for each episode, it's a different mood, it's a different tone sometimes, a different animation, a different story. And while at points I consider whether or not that would be engaging, because someone actually recommended that I watch this. So shout out to my friend Jody for actually recommending that I watch it. I don't know how this flew under my radar, given that this is something that I am deeply passionate about. Again, I'm no expert. I'm just a fan like the rest of you, and someone who enjoys this type of content, right? So I said before that I'd briefly touch on some of my favorite episodes. The first being Sonny's Edge, right, which essentially has a cyberpunk aspect to it, and it follows. And I mentioned before they're short stories, so each episode is around 16 minutes long, if so much. But somehow they managed to tell really intricate stories within that tight time frame, right? And if you're wanting more, so I do hope we get more. So as I mentioned earlier, episode 1, Sonny's Edge, follows this character, we only know her as Sonny, who is in this futuristic cyberpunk world. And for those of you who are fans of Ghost in the Shell, which happens to be my favorite all-time anime, you'll notice a lot of similarities here in terms of the world building itself. And even recently, the film that just released earlier this month, Battle Angel Alita, which now that I think about it, a lot of similarities with Alita. Alright, so Battle Angel Alita. So you'll notice a lot of similarities coming across in that particular episode. And Sonny herself, at the onset, appears, she has a lot of scars. Someone who's survived a lot, right, in this gruesome world. And she's approached by this gentleman because she fights in an arena where she takes control of this creature, and her and her opponent go at it until one survivor is left standing, right? And so far she's on a hot streak. And this guy approaches her and asks her if she can take a dive, just lose the fight. And he gave her this exorbitant amount of cash. And she outright says no, and he's baffled as to why she could never earn this much money, just actually, even if she did win several more battles. And he didn't understand it. Her friend explained to him, this is the situation. Sonny's been through a lot. Now, because of guys like you, she didn't hide the fact that she thought it was a creep, and he was very wealthy. It felt like he could just buy her, and under the right circumstances, he probably might have, right? But the friend explained to him that Sonny survived a lot. In the past, she was kidnapped by these wealthy guys who just wanted a toy, basically, to play with, and then they carved her up and stuff like that, and somehow she managed to survive it all. And so she proceeds to essentially give him the middle finger, and he literally got a middle finger. And she goes on to fight her battle in this really gruesome, intense battle in the arena with her and her opponent, where she's literally fighting for her life, and she somehow comes out on top. I will not spoil it for you, so be sure to go and check it out. Um, and towards the end, the wealthy gentleman from who she met before sent his wife to essentially seduce Sonny, right? Into giving up her secrets essentially, and she got close enough to the point where she was able to severely injure Sonny, and whilst they had her on the floor, because he came in afterwards and essentially wanted to know, I mean, what gave her her edge, and it was a question that he asked her initially when they just met, and it's something that he didn't understand, and I don't. Oh, she didn't bother to give him an explanation. Only that, or she didn't initially rather, but here, on stomping on the corpse that was on the ground, he realized that that it was just a shell and it's not really her. And to his surprise, the very beast that was in the pit fighting for its life, her voice emanated from the creature, and it turned out to be Sonny. And what was operating the creature was in fact the shell, and Sonny was actually the one in control. Sonny, this creature, was actually in control. But it didn't go too far in depth in terms of how Sonny was able to get that, to acquire that body. Just that she was so severely injured when her friends found her that the only thing they could salvage was her brain. And so I'm assuming that they found some way to implant it in that creature, and she became Sonny, and as she puts it, that is her edge. Every time she goes in the ring, she's fighting for her life. She's fighting for those men that did those horrible things to her, right? And just the animation, the theme of it all. Sonny is coming back, and essentially she was a victim, but she's not anymore, and she's now taking control. And it's just something that was beautifully conveyed, right? Three Robots wasn't particularly one of my favorites. It only, I believe it's episode 2. Although I'm hearing rumors that Netflix shuffles the order of the episodes based on the person actually viewing it. I have yet to come across anyone who has had a different sequence, but some people have actually come out and said that the episode sequences are different for them. I suppose it's just one of those things that Netflix is attempting to try out and see how well it plays with the general audience, similar to Bandersnatch, right? But Three Robots essentially grew on me later on. I watched it a few times. I did like, and it's tonally, it's odd. It's tonally, it's vastly different in tone from the first episode, Sonny's Edge. So it follows three robots wandering a post-apocalyptic Earth, essentially, and they are exploring, see what mankind. It appears as though it's been hundreds, if not thousands, of years since man has self-destructed, basically, and they have sometimes very deep and profound conversations about what actually happened to mankind, and how they basically annihilated themselves. And there was just a really there was a lot of levity, a lot of humor, and at the end they discovered that, or they theorized that there were some cat overlords that eventually took over, and the very cat that's been following them and for the entire episode begins to speak and calls on this horde of cats, and apparently they're sentient, right? And so it's a really funny episode, a lot of humor, and if you're coming from episode 1, which was a much darker tone and darker theme, it gave some levity coming from that episode, and it was really fun and a wholesome story, and it was just enjoyable, right? Now, Zima Blue, which is my favorite of all the episodes in Love, Death, and Robots, essentially follows, or initially it follows this icon, this entity in the and I'm not sure if it's a social commentary on Hollywood and where we are now. Depending on who's watching, you might interpret it that way, you may not. He's this icon that people idolize and for his art, right? And they depict all these beautiful sculptures and creations that he's made, and he searches out this one reporter and says to her that he wants to tell his story, because his origins have been shrouded in mystery. No one knows who he was, where he came from. He just came to be, and created this beautiful art. And he says to her he wants to do one final piece. He wants to tell his story, and he chose her to tell it to, right? And Zima Blue wasn't. No, there are several episodes throughout where there's a lot of action, a lot of gore. This was one of those slow, deliberately paced episodes where there was no action. It was just art, right? It's art, really intricate story, and it was just very beautiful in its own way, right? And whilst he was there, he tells a story about, or rather, it was more or less stripping away her assumptions of who she thought he was or where he came from, which any mysterious figure, or we tend to have these fantasies and notions about people who we think are bigger than life, and some things that we imagine are just not necessarily true, but that's how we imagine those persons. And it was the same thing for Zima. Rumors began, and from what she learned, it was this man who, over time, as he created works of art, he began to create his own masterpiece in his own body, and he swapped his body out for cybernetics, and it was just this beautiful, tall, striking figure that everyone knew. But as he told her the story of his actual origins, which started with humble beginnings of essentially a robot that was purchased to clean a pool, and it kept doing its job every day. And this owner, this wonderful lady, decided she wanted him to be more, and so she gave him intelligence, albeit artificial. But over time, he kept adding, and he grew to become more sentient, and he added to himself and modified his body, and he became the Zima Blue that everyone knew. And in the end, as he told the story, and his final piece, in fact, he stripped away all that made him as he is now, and returned to what he once was, which was just a simple task-oriented machine, just scrubbing along the pool's edge, going all the way around. And it was just one of those stories that you just never saw, one of those twists that you just never saw coming. And that just fascinated me, because it spoke to so many, a lot of social commentary about where we are today, and perception, and fame, and all of that, right? So for me, that was one of the better episodes. Again, there are a lot of close calls. Sonny's Edge is definitely up there, as well as what was it? As well as The Witness. That was just absolutely stunning and mind-bending, right? A lot of these episodes essentially are just, it's like Black Mirror on acid for the most part, right? It's very trippy. But if you are into that, fantasy, sci-fi, weird, odd characters and stories, it's something that you would truly enjoy, right? So, as I mentioned before, I'm curious to see. I believe this was a test of sorts for Netflix to see where they can go with animation. They have, over the past few months, been acquiring a lot of animated properties, anime and Western animation as well. And I feel this is a test for them to say, okay, there's a market here for this, and I do think we can own this this niche. I really do hope it becomes more than just a niche over time, but for the moment that is what it is, and I do hope, and I'm a little biased of course, because again, love of animation, and I am still hoping that they actually do a Berserk adaptation anime, not live action, Berserk anime from the ground up, and a number of animators have expressed interest in doing it, but it's a matter of the rights issues, right? But I am hopeful that we'll eventually get there. Until then, I'm quite fine with small stories like this. I do hope. I'm not even sure I want a season 2 of Love, Death and Robots, only because everything is so contained, self-contained, and the stories are told, albeit in a compact 16 minutes. It's the stories they have their own conclusion, and I wouldn't want to ruin that with sequels and stuff. But if they do decide to do it, I would not mind, right? For the criticisms I mentioned earlier, I dared to go to Twitter, unfortunately, against my better judgment, and some of the criticisms were in a way warranted, or at the very least I understood where they were coming from. Some of the more prominent ones being that there weren't a lot of lead female animators or directors or anyone or any female in the lead, right? And again, I say there's some merit to it, but conversations like this, we have to be a bit practical, right? I do fully acknowledge it, that the playing field is not even for everyone, whether it's sex or race, right? We don't see a lot of diversity there, and I do want that to change going forward, but I don't believe that detracts from the hard work that the artists have put in here. And I will say that because, for better or worse, this animation is a male-dominated field, right? Now, I'm not saying that I wouldn't like to see that change going forward. I would. I want to see people of all kinds and with different ideas bring them to the fold and sharing those stories with us, right? But for the moment, it is a male-dominated field, so you're not going to see an equal level of men and women there. It's just not realistic right now, anyway. Right? But I do hope we do get there at some point. And again, although there may not have been women at the front, there were certainly women in the creative process, in front of, whether in the voice acting or behind, in terms of editing and animating and stuff like that. There are people. There are a lot of different people involved in the entire process, and I wouldn't want to discount their efforts by saying that, okay, absolutely none were involved in this process. So, I take the criticism, and I do hope that the success of this property, right, this series, and I would encourage everyone. I've said it to everyone that I've met so far. Watch Love, Death and Robots. We want them to see that there is a market for this. There are people who want this, and as we go along, I do believe that we will see more people coming forward, whatever gender or sex it might be, gender, race it might be. So this will open the doors, I believe, and give all of those persons opportunities to tell their story, and that's what I believe you all want to see, right? So again. Valid criticism. Some are a bit misplaced, but still there's an argument to be made there nonetheless. All right. So for again animation, please check out Love, Death and Robots. Tell everyone that you know, check out Love, Death and Robots. Make some noise about it so that Netflix, sometimes they do have a habit of canceling shows. I don't think this will be one of them, if only from the sheer popularity of it so far since it has launched. And I do hope that in the future we do get a lot more unique content like this, and it opens the door for a lot of different animation types to find a platform on Netflix. As it is now, we have so few. So I'm very happy with this series. Definitely recommend it to everyone. Check it out. Tell your friends to check it out. As I mentioned before, I couldn't cover all 18 episodes in one video. I didn't want the video to be too long. But I mean, if you guys are interested and you want to, because I would love to have some in-depth conversations about each and every single episode, because they each have their own themes that you can dissect and have some in-depth conversations about, some real conversations, right? So I mean, if you're interested in that, post down below. Let me know whether or not you'd like to see a particular episode. It doesn't have to be all, but you can just highlight what episode you'd want me to cover, and we can just have some discussions about that. Alright, so be sure to hit like or subscribe. Thanks for checking the video out, and I'll see you guys next time.